This episode of Scrolling to Death is sponsored by Bark Technologies. Bark offers parents advanced content monitoring for all of your child's devices. Bark is literally helping to save lives and has alerted parents to millions of life-threatening situations like self-harm and severe bullying. More on Bark in the episode notes. Welcome to Scrolling to Death. Today I'm joined by an incredible human and advocate, Sheri Lopez. Hi, Sheri.
Hi.
Hi, thank you for joining me. It is so wonderful to meet you. We're going to go through your story today and what you've learned. But I want to start with, parents these days have a harder job than I think ever before. We have to get ourselves educated on some really hard topics in order to prepare and protect our children. Because if we don't, they're going to face a lot of scary things on social media and learn about things from social media or predators themselves, and that's not what we want. So, Sheri, your story today is about grooming and trafficking, and I've become familiar with this topic because of the fact that predators are using social media and online platforms to reach kids more than ever before, and we'll get into that. But first, do you mind just sharing your story with us?
Absolutely. I share my story to prevent other children from experiencing what I went through. But I was actually groomed in person over a 3-month period by my high school boyfriend's father. And I ended up being trafficked for 7 years. And why I share is not just educational aspects, but because I came from the family that said it never would have happened to my kids. Never, ever, ever. My mother was an attorney. My father was a successful businessman. We had no trouble in our home. I just happened to be the middle of 3 girls, and I was trying to find my place, and I was vulnerable.
Yeah. How did things start? If you could talk about the grooming piece, because I have been interviewing kids who were groomed online, and I wonder what the similarities are to in-person grooming.
You know, actually, the similarities are very, very much the same.
Okay.
They target the victim, and they can do that by face-to-face watching and observing how a child behaves. And again, it's the same thing online because kids are sharing too much of how they feel without any filter online. So they're looking for a vulnerable child or a teen. Then they focus on, okay, now let's try to create a bond with that child and start moving their allegiance from their source, like with my parents, or their source of stability over towards the trafficker. Yeah. So I really want people to understand that not only did I come from a good home, but the trafficker found a big void in the fact that I had always wanted a brother, and we never had any. In my book, I call him Carl, the recruiter, the boyfriend. And the boyfriend's father was getting information from Carl. So we'd have these conversations. Just what upsets you in your home? What do your parents fight about? What do you wish you had? So all that information was being shared with his father. And one of those was the fact that I wished I had brothers. Well, Carl's father and these other men that were part of the grooming team filled that void by saying, "Oh, we will be the brothers that you never had. We'll protect you. We'll do everything that a brother would do." And so as a naive 15-year-old whose brains are not developed enough to spot danger, I took it. I believed exactly everything that was being told to me. And so little by little, I'd be moved away from my parents emotionally. And remember, this is an emotional connection. And closer to the groomer trafficker. Right.
Wow. Yeah. And this is what I'm hearing is it starts with gathering of information and finding common, the groomer is probably pretending to be interested in what the child is interested in. And with social media, it's so easy to find out what a child is interested in or worried about or information about them because we're sharing and oversharing so much. Right. The kids are themselves and the parents are on the kids as well. And you pointed out spotting the danger. And that's one thing. I interviewed Harrison Haynes recently, who was groomed from between 12 and 13 years old. And at that age, they don't understand what is dangerous, especially when it's being cloaked in an avatar on Snapchat or Roblox or something like that. It doesn't feel dangerous when someone's just trying to get to know you, but there's more to it than that. Can we back up and can you just define trafficking and maybe what the differences are 20 years ago versus what's happening today?
The only thing that's different is it has a new name.
Okay.
A trafficker is a pimp. That's what it is. A trafficker is the person that sells, and I focus on minors only. So they sell their victim, the minor, for money.
Okay.
So these are just nicer, more palatable words. Mm-hmm. So people don't have to absorb the fact that this involves sexual grooming of our kids. Mm-hmm. And that's actually what is happening when somebody is trafficking a minor. They're making money off that child's body.
Would that include selling nude imagery or videos or sexualized imagery and videos? That would also be considered trafficking, even though it's not in person.
Absolutely. And I tell parents when I have these conversations or when I teach one of my classes that you can have a groomer, a sexual groomer right inside your home and never even know it via the internet because of all these apps, online games. And right now, there's estimated to be over 130 apps that kids are using. So why should parents try to figure out the app? What they need to do is have the conversations with their kids about what somebody who's potentially trying to groom them will say to them. Mm-hmm. They'll be over complimentary. And there's key phrases like, my mom and dad don't get me. Nobody loves me. My mom and dad won't let me date. I want to die. All these things that these kids share. And those are just keywords that somebody who wants to groom and even digitally traffic a child look for. And then they just start creating that relationship with that child with the goal of emotionally manipulating them. Mm-hmm. And American Psychology Journal, I believe it is, has said that social media was designed for adult brains, meaning 25 and older. Yeah. And so there's such an addictive part to a child being on social media. It's really hard for kids to break away. And then they use that as their mechanism for validation and worth.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Yeah.
And the prevalence of trafficking through social media, and now that I'm fully understanding that it can simply be someone buying nude imagery from you and then distributing it, that is happening all the time, especially on Snapchat. There's in TikTok even, but there's test accounts on Snapchat set up as 14-year-olds. These test accounts are getting messages saying, I'll pay you for nudes. I mean, users that have that as their username or sending it in the messages so this is something that I want to say if your child is on Snapchat, they're very likely to be contacted by someone that is trying to traffic them for sexualized imagery. What are you seeing for prevalence?
Any app has the potential for a groomer to have contact with the child. There is no app. There's nothing online. YouTube Kids, it happens on. Chromebooks in schools, it happens on. There is nothing. A groomer can learn how to break through a firewall on any device if they really want to get to a child. What people don't talk about a lot is the dark web. So a lot of these images that are being captured digitally through an app, or a groomer has built a relationship with a child on a live streaming app or some type of other app. In the dark web, there are pedophile rings, and the number one search engine request for Tor, which is on the dark web search engine. Don't go there, but it's child porn. And they have these pedophile rings that are based on membership. So to remain a member of these pedophile rings, you have to provide new content every month. Sure. So that means these predators have to go and hunt down more images from new kids.
Mm-hmm.
So if anybody thinks that their child is safe online, they're fooling themselves.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. And this is happening on Instagram as well, where they'll blur nude images and direct messages on Instagram, but still allow you to see them anyway. You just have to click on it, which is almost more of a tease for a teenager to look at the nude image by saying this could be a nude image. And with Snapchat, there's that false sense of security because you're being told, well, the snaps disappear, but it's so easy for that predator to take a photo or a screenshot of that nude image and then be sharing it elsewhere, like the dark web, as you mentioned. Okay, so you talked a little bit about the kind of language and things that a groomer will begin asking the child for, some of the information that they'll be requesting. But how do we warn our kids about this proactively so that they know, like in kid language, how do we let them know that they could be contacted by someone that's going to try to get information from them and they could be trying to hurt them? Like, what does that conversation look like?
What I always tell parents is you have to be honest with your kids and you have to share the reality that there are people out there that want you to do things such as show pictures of your body. And I say there is nothing wrong with scaring your child because it's the reality.
Mm-hmm.
You have to teach them how to cross a street safely. Well, you have to teach them how to use the internet safely, just like driving a car. Anything that a child does, even adults can get sucked into this. But
yeah,
social media doesn't come with a parent's guidebook. So this is, over the last decade or so, it's been a huge learning experience for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And the groomers are one step ahead of parents because we've always been taught that social media apps are all safe, that there's no reason to be concerned about what can happen on the other end or playing a game like Roblox or Minecraft. It's just a game.
Mm-hmm.
But again, somebody that wants to harm a child is going to find any means to possibly do that.
Mm-hmm.
So with games, I always say parents play with your kids.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily, some of these games are horrible and never should be played, but they're full of violence.
I agree. Yeah.
Yeah. But play with your child. At least that way you get to see what they're doing. If any engagement for a chat occurs, you can just step in. And it's a good bonding time for you and your child. I would say no social media or phones until they're at least an adult, but that's not reality and it's not going to happen.
Yeah. I can try. I'll be the first. No, there are people doing it. There are people. I just talked to a doctor in Arizona yesterday, and her senior and sophomore in high school don't have phones, which is
awesome.
Insane. Yeah. And so great.
Yeah.
Okay. So I was going to ask you, what do you think about social media? Do we have to give it to them so they can socialize? And no, right. I completely agree. And there's actually no data to suggest that your child suffers any negative consequences if you keep them off of social media. And they often are the ones that thrive. Please delay that use. And with conversations, like you mentioned, letting them know why, because, and I tell my 8-year-old, like, there are people online that are bad people, just like in real life. And they can get access to you if you're active on these platforms, and they can fool you and trick you. So, okay, what about if you're a parent that's decided to give access to social media and you've had conversations, but you want to know, are there warning signs to know if there's something going on like this with your child?
There are. Again, if you're going to give those devices to your child, you need to have every password, every login, everything so that you can go and check it out every once in a while.
Yeah.
Which I would say actually daily if you're going to allow your kids to have those. But a child's personality changes a lot when they know something wrong. There's something wrong that's happening to them and they don't have the words. Like, I didn't have any words to explain to my parents what was happening with my grooming process and then being trafficked because I didn't understand it.
Yeah.
And that's the problem that young people have, is they don't understand what's happening. So how can they tell somebody? And then it's a
Wow.
very uncomfortable conversation. Hey,
Mhm.
mom and dad, some guy who I thought was my friend or pretended to be my age and a boyfriend, now I found out he wasn't,
Mhm.
was wanting nude pictures of me. How can a kid tell that to their parents? They would be terrified.
Especially if the kid has shared a nude image and now they feel like they're going to get in trouble or, God forbid, get their phone taken away,
No.
that kind of thing.
I know, because peer pressure is so strong on a teen, especially middle school. It's mainly the 6th, 7th, 8th grades where it's really tough on the kids because that's where everybody's really trying to find their group. And that's where I was when I was groomed. And so many other survivors I have talked to, they're in that group. And it's so easy to mess with a child's head. And parents need to wake up to the fact that you have to teach a child how to be safe online, be comfortable sharing if you feel somebody maybe misrepresented themselves online and said they were a boy or a girl at their school, but now you're finding out they're not that person. To be able to have those conversations and to open up the door with the parents.
What do we do if our child is being groomed online? Like we find evidence of it or they happen to share something with us. What do we do from there?
Well, first of all, remove all devices from the child. You need to contact the police. They can do a forensic audit of the phone so that they can get all of the communications, texts, or if it's done, on a laptop or a tablet, so that they can get all that they need to do an investigation and hopefully charge that adult with some sort of a charge.
Yeah.
Whether it be child enticement or inappropriate images. And then remove the child from the situation altogether. Make sure they have no contact with that person. Check in with the child and say, you're safe, you're loved, you're okay. Let's get some help. If you think that they have been trafficked, take them to your doctor or to the emergency room to get a thorough checkup and then get whatever help they need. Because trafficking trauma stays with you for your entire life. Yeah, I mean, it's been a long time since I've been trafficked, but I've had 13 surgeries to date just to repair my abdominal region. And, it stays with you for your whole life.
And the doors are so wide open with social media access. Like we know kids are getting contacted by predators on there, some of which are asking for nude imagery, some of which are offering to pay you for nude imagery. And that just starts this process. I mean, there's the grooming, like the longer form grooming of trying to be your friend and trying to get your confidence and things like that. But there's just straight up people asking for nude imagery first thing they say to you. And again, it's not if, but when your kid is going to get contacted by a predator on social media. So what are they going to do? What are they going to do when someone contacts them saying, hey, I know you from school, and mentions some mutual place that is nearby because they know where you live and, or where you go to school or who your friends are? I mean, what is your child going to do? So we have to have those conversations early and often, like all of these things, these hard conversations.
Right. Parents need to accept the fact that this whole situation of grooming, trafficking, or just imagery requests and payment, it happens every day. And so we have to, as a society, as parents, as grandparents, we have to realize that we have to have those conversations with our kids at a very young age. Yeah. We always teach about stranger danger, right? But is it ever taught online? Okay, the stranger aspect online. Not everybody online is your friend or somebody who wants to be nice to you. There are people that have motives to use you and get something from you. And so you have to have those conversations. And I always ask kids, so how can you have 400 friends?
Right.
I bet you could name on your hand, who are your 5 friends?
Yeah.
But the more likes or thumbs up or friends equates to validation, especially for the young girls. At that young age, preteen and the early teen years, that's when the young girls are they're infatuated with the cute boys, or they want to be Cinderella, which those movies do such a disservice to girls. But we have to have conversations, and parents, I know parents get uncomfortable just having the birds and the bee talk, but they need to have this talk with their kids.
Yeah.
It breaks my heart every time I hear that a child's gone missing, because I volunteer with an organization here in Arizona. And so if we suspect that it's trafficking, my team, we will go into these places where we know the young girls, it's called turning out, are turned out, so we can see if we can spot them to get the police over there to get them out. And it's been very successful. We've been able to get some young people out of being trafficked without a long-term part of being trafficked,
Okay. So when we're having these conversations, it's about there's strangers online, there's strangers. Like, even if it's your friend and you're not seeing them in real time, like, how do you know that that's your friend? So having a barrier there and not just trusting that people are who they say they are when you cannot see them face to face. And then not giving away any personal information about yourself. Never sharing images of your body. And I think, that starts from a young age. Your body is private to you, and other people shouldn't be seeing your body. Anything else that is like basics for kids to educate them about this and keeping themselves safe.
That if somebody wants to request to have a conversation, a pop-up comes up or something, if you truly don't know who they are, don't be afraid to hurt their feelings. And I have young people say, well, this person wants to talk to me. How mean of me not to want to talk to them. And I said, if you don't know them, why do you want to talk to them? They're not your friend. So be okay with saying, you're not my friend. I don't need to talk to you. I don't know who you are.
Yeah. Amazing. Yeah.
It's
like when you, that applies to me when I get text messages that I might be spam, but they said my name and I feel bad. I don't want to be like, excuse me, who's this? And instead of just being like, just ignore it. Because if they knew who I was, I would know who they are as well. They would indicate that in some way.
Right. Well, see, that's one thing right there. Just by using your name, that pulls you in.
Yes,
and
it does.
A groomer can go through anybody's profile page on any app and see a lot of information about kids and what they're sharing. And so they can use that and they can go like, hey, so-and-so, Lisa, hey, I'm so-and-so's friend who they mentioned earlier. So
right.
They're groomers are very sly and very good at what they do to confuse kids.
Yeah, just to rag on social media one more time, they are not protecting our kids from this. There is technology that exists, AI technology that can scan for grooming behavior, and they're not employing it to the extent that they need to. There's still millions of children getting groomed and trafficked on social media platforms, so we cannot trust the platforms on their own. If we are going to let them have access, please add on secondary parental monitoring like Bark Technologies or something so that you can get alerts if strangers are contacting them, and then you can intervene. Pausing here to talk about tools that can save your child's life, and that is the Bark phone, the Bark app, and the Bark watch. Bark goes beyond device mirroring, using advanced AI to scan texts, social media, images, videos, and audio for threats like grooming and trafficking conversations or sending of nude imagery, even cyberbullying. The harms of social media are scary, and tools like Bark can give you peace of mind knowing that you'll get an alert if something has happened to your child. The Bark phone is the most customizable kids phone with text and social media monitoring built in. It is the safest option, but if you're going with an Android or an iPhone, please layer on the Bark monitoring app, which is high-tech parental monitoring. It scans their activities for harmful content. You can create screen time schedules, block certain websites and apps, and a ton more. And the new Bark watch can help you delay the use of a smartphone and monitor their activity. Back to my conversation with Sheri. Yeah.
And then a lot of times the person who's making contact with the child may say, go download this app and let's start having conversations on that app.
So that's one thing I learned too. Groomers will often try to move your child from social media to a more protected app like Facebook Messenger that has end-to-end encryption, or Telegram, or even iMessage because it's encrypted as well. So that's something to look out for, right?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. But if you don't know it's happening, you're not going to be able to do anything about it. And then that goes back to the fact that at the end of the day, you need to say, hey, hand over your phone. I want to look at everything that you've done today. Or, something like that. Probably 90% of the parents own all of the technology that they have given to their kids, phones, tablets, computers. So it belongs to the parents, most likely, and you can take it away and be comfortable doing that.
Yes. Yeah. And please, Christmas is coming up. Don't give your child a device as a gift, because then they think it's theirs. They think they can hide things from you. They think that it's belongs to them, and that is not the case. So your website is called pearlatthemailbox.com, and your memoir. So tell me about that title and that name.
Okay. So Pearl was this amazing, amazing woman. At the last location I was held at when I was being trafficked, she was the classic nosy neighbor, and who I love, nosy neighbors, because I don't know how many people even know who their neighbors are anymore. So they can't spot if there's odd things happening, if there's too many different cars, people coming and going. But Pearl paid attention to the particular apartment that I was being held in with other trafficked girls. And I had earned the privilege from that particular trafficker because I behaved, that I got to go and collect the mail. And I always say, think about that next time you go to the mailbox. I earned that privilege of going to get the mail by behaving. And Pearl would always be there. And she would say, honey, I know something is wrong. When you're ready to go, I'll take you. And you have to remember, after being trafficked for so long, I was really just a walking shell of a human being. Who I was destroyed. And I knew I was going to die one way or the other. I just didn't know at whose hands. So I'd had a particularly bad beating one day. And I went to the mailbox, and Pearl was there. And she said, are you ready to go? And I walked away with her. And that started a very, very continuous journey of recovery. So that's why everything is called Pearl at the Mailbox, in honor of this amazing, brave woman who paid attention to her surroundings and what was happening to her. She saved my life.
Are you still in contact with Pearl?
She's passed away.
Oh.
Yeah, I did stay in contact with her for a long, long time. And then she got Alzheimer's and couldn't remember who I was. But that's why everybody needs to be a Pearl. Pay attention. That doesn't mean you need to be the one to go in and do the rescue, but you could pay attention. And if something is odd, get somebody involved who's in authority. It's better to be wrong than to second guess yourself and think, gosh, I was at the mall or the store and something looked really odd, and I had that feeling that something was odd, but I didn't do anything about it. Because it's going to bug you and bug you and bug you.
Yeah. And if you don't say something, someone could be getting harmed, and then more kids could get harmed. And you're speaking out because of that and saving children in the process. So tell us about your mission and what you're focused on with Pearl at the Mailbox.
Okay. So I focus on educating about child grooming because that's where we have a chance to save our kids from being trafficked. And grooming is something that occurs over a period of time, which is much different than instant images. That's just going straight into digital trafficking.
Okay.
But grooming is over a period of time. So my grooming was a 3-month-long period. From the time I met Carl's father to the time I was sold for the first time. And so I educate people about the grooming process so they can look for it. I teach, I speak, I wrote my book. Just more in depth about showing how the process occurred for grooming. And then I work on a lot of legislation to protect children in and out of school and to help survivors regain some type of control of their life, because the life that they had prior to trafficking is gone. My life, what may have been, is gone. And it took me well over 20 years for me to even grasp what happened to me. And then another 5 years before I could even start talking about it.
Wow.
So here in Arizona, we were able to get the vacator law updated. And the vacator law allows somebody who has been charged with some type of crime at a local level to petition the court to have those charges vacated, which means set aside. And that was signed by the governor and went into effect last month. So that's a big victory for survivors. Then we went to the federal level with the Trafficking Survivors Relief Act, which is the same thing as the vacator, except it pertains to those that have been charged with federal crimes while being trafficked, such as money laundering. And then we have worked on bills to get individuals that exploit minors in school held accountable for that. We were able to get the child enticement law into our public schools in our county, but it's not enough. Some public schools are wonderful about having educational programs about grooming and trafficking. Where I live, not so much. So that's why I'm running for my school board. So I
good. Vote for Sheri.
Try and get those programs into the school, because if kids don't know what to look for, they can fall prey to what somebody's trying to do.
Any internet-enabled device, including the school iPads and Chromebooks, can get predators access to children. And that is happening. And so the education from the school is a priority, and educating parents on the harms of those devices as well. And so I'm really happy that's something I'm working on, and really happy to hear that you are as well. It's much needed. And I think next year is the year we start paying attention to school devices and the dangers there, and warning people about them. So let me know how I can help with your legislation. But everything that you're doing is incredible. You are such a hero to other families for spreading the message about this. I guarantee parents are listening to this saying, I'm going to go have a conversation with my child about those simple things, about what to look out for, and potentially delaying access. And all of those things will help us protect our children from something terrible happening to them through those devices or even in-person interactions as well. So I'm going to include pearl@themailbox.com in the episode notes, and your book is there, and your resources and your speaking information. Is there anything else or anywhere else listeners can connect with you?
Well, we're on Facebook, Instagram, and X now. I still keep trying to say Twitter. Just under Pearl at the Mailbox.
Okay.
But one other bill we're working on with Senator Cruz is the Take It Down Act.
Okay. Yeah.
That one, right?
Yeah. You told me about it.
Yeah.
I interviewed him and he talked about it.
Yeah. So we had one holdout. So it's kind of stalled, but it's going, it'll be changed whatever that individual that decided they didn't want to vote for it.
Yeah,
it'll get changed language-wise. But that will hold social media companies responsible for taking down an inappropriate image within 48 hours. It's like, we got to get that stuff down.
Yeah. I'll include information about that bill and a link to my interview with Senator Cruz, because he talks about that in more detail as well. And that's so important, is we should not be letting kids' nude imagery sit on these social media sites. They shouldn't even be able to send it in the first place, in my opinion. But if it's been reported, it needs to be taken down.
Well, it just shows you, sadly, how much of a demand there is. So this next legislative session, I will be going after the buyers.
Okay. Oh, good. Okay, Sheri. And vote for Sheri for your school board. I'm so glad you're doing that. And I think about doing it too, because we need more voices looking out for kids on those school boards, and there's too many voices that are like so pro-tech and pushing more technology on these kids without security and without safety in mind on the school boards. It's crazy.
Well, they think that a firewall in place is enough, but it's not.
No.
Anybody can break through it if they really want to.
Yeah.
And I know
the kids can. The kids know how.
Yes, they can. Some kids, that's what they love to do is hack.
Yeah.
So
and then they tell the other ones, and they're all doing it. They all figured out how to get to YouTube on those devices or wherever they want to get to.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, Sheri, thank you so much for this conversation, and let's keep in touch. And I hope listeners will go to pearl@themailbox.com to find out more about Sheri's story and resources. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for letting me share. We have to talk about this.
Yes, we do.